Good afternoon, ladies. Hello. This is Carla Metzdorf. I am admin to the group Overcoming Anxiety for Stressed Out Moms Who've Had Enough. And I'm also a certified health and life coach that works with moms to overcome anxiety. Today I'm coming on live because I want to talk to you all about the many phases of anxiety and why you experience them. So what that means is I want to talk to you about the different forms of anxiety that there are and why you may be facing some of these forms of anxiety. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. So as you come on, please say hi, because I like to see who's on with me, and I am just going to actually try to change the angle of my camera because I don't want that light like in the picture. So, hey Abby, I see that you came on. Ladies, as you come on, say hi. I'm going to just see who's in the group. I'm going to update the group, I should say, because I'm on my computer and I'm on my phone. I do the live from the phone because it's just easier that way. I tried it from the computer and it just does not work right for me. So we're going to do it this way. But you know what? I don't like the angle. So I'm going to do it this way. Hold on. I'm just changing how my phone... Oops, I almost lost you guys. Okay. Let's see if that works. Hi. So, again, we're going to talk about the different forms of anxiety. So, the reason why I picked this is because usually when I speak to a mom and I say, like, what are you experiencing? They'll be like, well, I just started perimenopause, or I'm in menopause and I'm anxious. And, you know, that's why I have anxiety. But then when I ask about, okay, so you haven't had anxiety before this? It's like, oh, no, I've had anxiety my whole life. So in other words, you make it sound like you just started having anxiety, but then I find out you've had anxiety your whole life. So and then like when I say, okay, so if you have anxiety now because of perimenopause, hey, Lisa, what was the anxiety like before? So what I often tell everybody is that anxiety is multifaceted. And what I mean by that is that there are different forms of anxiety. You don't usually have anxiety for one reason. There's usually different reasons why we have anxiety. So, but first what I want to do is talk about those different forms of anxiety. Why, like what form of anxiety are you experiencing? So yesterday in the group, I made a post. I did a poll just to see, you know, who was going to answer, who was going to say, you know, this is what I experience. And it wasn't to my surprise that health anxiety is felt more than most other anxieties. That's not very surprising to me. So with further ado, let me go through the different type of anxieties that you might experience, then give the reason why we may have these different types of anxieties, and then I'll get into a little bit about like how we can overcome them. Okay, so ladies, as you come on, I see more and more people are coming on. Just say hello. Abby, Lisa, and Candy with me. I don't know who else. And again, I'm going to update the group because you're in the group as well. It's live in the group. Yep, here. Okay. All right. So, anxiety. We know anxiety is an emotion, right? Even in and of itself, it's an emotion. It's how you're responding, all right? It's a response, just like anger, sadness, something happened, you're responding. So if it's just a response, why do we say we have an anxiety disorder? Well, you might start off with a generalized anxiety disorder. It becomes a disorder when anxiety starts disrupting your life, okay? So when you start having anxiety more than just situational, okay? When anxiety starts coming into your life and taking over the thoughts, your feelings, and start interfering, you start excessive worrying, you start avoiding situations, the symptoms are just happening more and more, and you find it very hard to control your thoughts, your symptoms. Now we say it's a disorder, because it's really affecting your life now. So that is generalized anxiety disorder. And I'm going out on a limb just to say everybody in this group has that. Okay? That much I think we could all agree on. Generalized anxiety disorder. Okay? But if you're just having anxiety, let's say about a certain situation, and then the situation passes and so does the anxiety, and then you don't get anxiety again until, like, let's say 6 months later when another situation happens, that's not an anxiety disorder, okay? That means you're just getting anxious feelings when maybe certain situations come up. That doesn't mean you can't stand to work on your resilience, so that when you have stress, you can deal better with the stress. We can all stand to manage our stress a little bit better. But when it starts taking over your life and starts coming on more frequently, absolutely. Hi, Caitlin. You definitely, it becomes a disorder. Okay. So, but there are different variations, okay, of anxiety disorders, okay. I'm no particular order. I mean, I listed them in another post that I made, I think on Monday, and I'm just going to go through them, and there are different things. I'm going to just give a little explanation, of each one, and see if this is you. And then after I go through them all, I want to get into why, all right? So, seasonal anxiety disorder. This is being anxious, like you experience anxiety during certain seasons of the year. And mostly that is like the fall and the winter. And the reason why is basically what happens in the fall and the winter. Let's say it gets colder, it gets darker, right? And basically, what happens is it disrupts some of our neurotransmitters and hormones because you're not going outside as much, getting that sunlight, right? And we kind of get a little upset because, it's dark at 4:30. 4:30, you still want to go out and walk, and that's the other thing. Not many of us are going out and walking anymore, and walking was like maybe our main form of exercise, so we're not exercising as much, so basically seasonal, the change of seasons can really affect our moods, okay? Because it affects melatonin, the way we sleep. It can really mess when you have lack of sleep. It messes with your mood, as I said. So again, seasonal anxiety disorder is basically just when the fall, the winter comes, or maybe even the spring and summer. For whatever reason, although I mean, some people just don't like the heat, okay? They don't like the heat, and maybe that upsets them, okay? But basically, you're in the depths of the season, and because of the change of weather, And the change of the, like, it's darker now, and it plays with your neurotransmitters and your hormones, and it just affects everything. And you find that you're anxious, you're depressed, you're moody, and it just changed your whole temperament. So that's seasonal anxiety disorder. Panic disorder. Panic disorder, all right? Basically, I mean, I lived with panic for years. Panic is plain and simple, the fear of fear. Now, that sounds ridiculous, okay? It really does sound ridiculous, because you're thinking, how can you fear fear? Well, think about what happens when your body is under a lot of stress, right? When your body has a lot of fear, your heart is coming out of your chest. You start shaking, right? But what do we know about anxiety, right? We become super sensitive to how we feel. So when you have all this fear in your body, and then you start focusing on how your body is reacting to that fear, it's the fear of fear, therefore you panic. Making sense, ladies? And a lot of you have if you don't have a disorder, again, it's kind of like anxiety. Just because you had panic once or twice in your life does not mean you have a disorder. A disorder is when you regularly have this. It's something that happens in your life. It's disrupting your life. It's not because you had it once. All right? So usually if you have a panic disorder, I know when I had it, I constantly thought I was having a heart attack. I always thought I was dying, losing control, losing my mind. I really thought my husband was going to put me away. And the thing is, you think you're out of control even when there's no danger. There's no lion or bear chasing you. Nobody is coming at you with a knife, or there's no danger anywhere, but you feel like you are in danger, okay? You have, the racing heart, but it's coming out of your chest. It's even more so. This is not just anxiety. This is like you just ran a marathon and you're gasping for air to breathe, okay? That's the other thing, shortness of breath, trembling, shaking, jitters. And you have a lot of avoidance, avoidance and the fear of what if it keeps happening, because it's the fear of fear. So what if this keeps happening? I can't stand these feelings. When are they going to stop? And you start avoiding people, places, and situations. But the thing is, like you've heard from me, you get into a cycle. With anxiety and with panic, you get into a cycle because you start going, I'm afraid of this. What if it keeps happening? It keeps happening because you're fearful of the thoughts, of the feelings, so it triggers another attack, and it keeps going on and on. Sandra, daily to multiple times a day, this isn't living, it's barely surviving. I hear you. Like I said, I dealt with this for years. I wasn't living. I wasn't functioning. So I know how you're feeling, Sandra. Just know that it's not forever. It really isn't forever. Once you understand what panic is, you can take control and overcome it. That's what I'm all about. So, stick with me, you'll learn about it, and you'll understand how to overcome it. Let's talk health anxiety. Okay. So, health anxiety, or what it's been affectionately known, and excuse my phone, I forgot to put it on silent. What health anxiety is affectionately known as hypochondria, a hypochondriac. I hate that term, but let's just say we have health anxiety, okay? So basically, what that is that you're super worried about your health, but not just about yours, but maybe your family too, you know? And I've been that way since I'm a child, okay? That's you, Lisa? That's not just you, Lisa. That's many of you in this group. You know, you're worried about your health. You're worried about everyone's health or your loved ones. You too, Donna, Tracy. Thank you for letting us know that. So what makes you be so scared about your health? You know, I mean, the trauma, the history of illness. These are all things, you know. Maybe you or a loved one had an illness. You may have overcome it, but what if it happens again? Or maybe the loved one had an illness and never overcame it, and you watch that happen. What if I have what my loved one had? You know, and that scares you, that what can happen to your loved ones can happen to you. My family used to sit around at the holidays, and all we would talk about is how we felt. About all the diseases and this and that. And my grandparents were in and out of the hospital all the time. That I actually believed when you hit a certain age, you just live at the hospital. I just thought, oh, you know, so I dreaded, like, I'm going to hit 40 and I'm just going to be admitted to the hospital constantly. Because this is what I thought. Because my grandparents were always sick. Always had something going on. Okay. So, but what happens is, you form these beliefs, okay, because you listen to what other people say, or are you somebody who watched too many Grey's Anatomy episodes, too many episodes of General Hospital, or I don't know what you're watching, and you're thinking, is that going to happen to me? Oh, I heard them say this on my favorite TV show, and then I started feeling it, and I'm thinking, now it's happening to me. Right? So what happens is with anxiety, you know, we get very sensitive. We get sensitized to these feelings. Any little ding in our body, little sensation, we freak out. Because we get these body sensations and we misinterpret them. We become obsessive about them, and we check. We keep checking the heart rate, keep checking the blood pressure, right? Who's with me? I know you know what I'm talking about, right? Give me a 1 if you're with me, right? And we need reassurance constantly. We need somebody to tell us we're okay, because we don't feel okay. We don't feel okay at all, right? Anybody can give me a 1? I know, Lisa, you feel that way. Lisa, Donna, sure, Tracy, Margaret. Okay, you're all coming through now. I know you understand this. Shanika, for sure. Yeah. So you may have that. So social anxiety. So what is social anxiety? You know, ladies, right now, I mean, I know some of you, you're coming, you're going. And if you're just coming on, I'm talking about the different forms of anxiety that you may have. You may not necessarily relate to all these anxieties I'm talking about, or you might be like, they're all me. Some are me, you know, but just see which ones right now you could relate to. And then I'm going to get into why you're experiencing them. And then like what you need to do, you know, to deal with it. Okay, so social anxiety is basically fear of like social interactions, okay, or social situations. You avoid them, all right, because, you know, low self-esteem, you know, definitely low self-esteem, and I'm not moving my mouse, so, okay, I'm losing you guys in the group. Low self-esteem. So, in another case also, you know, when you're in a crowd of people, you're thinking everyone's looking at me, and right away you're thinking they're all thinking negative about me. No one's looking at you going, oh, she's got nice skin, nice hair, I love her shoes, I love her makeup, or they're all looking at you going, oh my God, look at her. And you think the worst of yourself, and you think everybody else thinks that too. So you would rather stay home. It could be very isolating. You'll isolate yourself and not accept anything. Your screen keeps going out. I couldn't hear the last thing you said. My screen is going out? Oh. Yeah, okay. Yeah, if it's only good for you, Shanika, and it's not happening for anybody else, then I don't know. And I don't know what the last thing... You're going to have to watch the replay because I can't verify what the last thing was. But thank you, Lisa, for verifying that this isn't for everybody because that's concerning to me. But listen, if I'm going in and out for anybody, just watch the replay, and I don't know why that's happening. Oh, the volume. Oh, I don't know. That's weird because boy, am I loud. So I'm far from whisper, so I don't know. Again, can everybody hear me okay? If you can't hear me, let me know. But social anxiety, nope, you're fine. Okay, thank you. All right, so basically with social anxiety, you have difficulty speaking and interacting with others. Fear of being judged, low self-esteem, and you isolate yourself, okay? Separation anxiety. Basically, separation anxiety, all right? I kind of sort of spoke about it. Like remember when I was talking about, was this just last week? These weeks are going so fast, I don't know. But just last week, I talked about having a safe person, right? Safe person, it helps you to feel secure, right? So basically, separation anxiety is when you have this fear, this worry that you're going to be separated from someone that you really depend on. So let's say a child with a parent, okay? Or maybe you with your safe person, okay? You with a caregiver, you have distress because you can't imagine functioning without this person around, okay? I spoke a lot about that in the previous week's live when I spoke about having a safe person. So if anything, go watch that live if this speaks to you, okay? You don't want to be left alone or left behind. So, like a child may refuse to go to school or daycare because of the separation anxiety, or as a mom, as your kids in school, you might be having a lot of anxiety. I hope they're safe. And you can't wait to pick them up. You might even find yourself getting in the car and circling the school, making sure that everything's okay. Showing up at the school. Looking in the windows. These are all things that you might be doing because of your separation anxiety. Okay, depersonalization and derealization. This is another thing a lot of people experience, and it's pretty scary. Believe it or not, out of all the things here, this is the thing I experienced the least. But I did experience it, but it's the least amount. So depersonalization really is a detachment from yourself, okay? So your thoughts, your feelings, it's like you're observing yourself from the outside. You feel numb inside. And you feel like you're observing life going on from the outside. Does anybody have depersonalization? Anybody can relate to that? Just say yes or give me a 2. Let me know if you understand depersonalization. that you feel like you're separate from yourself, you're observing yourself from the outside. Derealization, okay, is a detachment from your environment, okay? You don't have that, Lisa. Okay. Yay. I mean, I don't mean to laugh, ladies, but I think we get happy when we hear something. We're like, yay, that's one thing I don't have. Yay, right? I mean, considering all the other things. But none of this is funny. None of this is funny, right? I mean, all of this is pretty freaking scary. I mean, depersonalization is very scary. Derealization is scary as well. That's a detachment from the environment. Now that's what I felt. I didn't feel it often, but I have felt that. And that's basically where it feels like everything outside of you, you're like in a daydream. Like, is this real? It's like the light, like everything you see doesn't feel real. I don't know how else to say it. I just remember feeling like, think about daydreaming. Like when you daydream and like you're doing pictures in your head, it's not really like that. It's more like you're living, like you're in the daydream. You're not seeing like everything around you is the daydream. It's like time has stood still. That's you, Shanika, you, Donna. Okay. Am I explaining it right? Because I haven't experienced that in years. Skyla, outer body. Okay. Outer body, isn't that more of depersonalization? Because you're detaching yourself from yourself. Whereas derealization is more of the environment. Like you're in your body, but everything around you feels unreal. So everything's like strange around, like, I don't know. It's like time has either slowed down or it gets faster. Like the timing is off. But it's like you're not in reality. Yeah, you're definitely not in reality. Even with either one, you feel like like you're not yourself for sure. So it's a scary experience because you feel like, what is going on? You feel numb, or people say dead inside, or you feel your thoughts and your feelings, but everything else outside feels like unreal. And that was, to me, that was weird. That was scary. Post-traumatic stress. Let's talk about that for a second. I was diagnosed with that. I was told by one of the professionals that I saw that I had post-traumatic stress from my experience with cancer. Basically, post-traumatic stress is when you have mental health issues after having a very traumatic event. So something very traumatic happened in your life, and it's like you can't get over it. You have flashbacks, okay? You can't stop thinking about it. It controls your thoughts. You relive it over and over, okay? Images, all right? And also you might have nightmares. I mean, the way you all know post-traumatic stress is because you think of the soldiers, right? We all hear the soldiers come back from war, they have post-traumatic stress, right? And they all have flashbacks. It's in all the movies, right? They have flashbacks from all that they experienced during the war. But it doesn't have to be a soldier from war. It could be if you were abused, if, I mean, and anything that you experience that caused such a traumatic experience in your life that you keep reliving it and you just can't get it out of your head, you know? So, so people with post-traumatic stress, I mean, they have a lot of avoidance because they want to stay clear of people or experiences that are going to remind them of how they feel or that's going to trigger them. I mean, going back to the soldier thing, right? I mean, let's say they're in a car and the car next to them backfires. It can sound like a gun going off. Or you hear about the soldiers having post-traumatic stress because on 4th of July or the fireworks, right? Boom, 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 and they think they're back at war. It's so sad, you know, to think that people live in pain like this. But they constantly relive that experience. So if you lived with, let's say, very abusive parents, and you're in school and you have a teacher who's like yelling at the students, you know, maybe, you know, the yelling that you're hearing is just, you know, I get this at home and it's abusive. So, you know, that's why maybe a child may act up in school. You know, so I'm just trying to think of things that can cause post-traumatic stress. Now, like I said, I had cancer. It was very stressful what I had to go through. I don't remember reliving it over and over, but what happened was I had so much fear, so much pent up stress that I had panic attacks daily for years. When I say daily, sometimes I don't mean like I had a panic attack, it was done, and I was good the rest of the day. I mean like all day long living in panic for years. It was horrible. It was horrible. But we'll get into more later of how to overcome. But so somebody with post-traumatic stress, you know, they're easily startled. As I was saying before, you know, the soldier in the car, they just hear the boom boom and right away, well, you know, they think they're back at war. So, you know, somebody with post-traumatic stress, their moods change very easily. They have a lot of negative thoughts and behaviors. And they basically detach themselves from others. Because basically being around others, I mean, you know, let's face it, depending on why you have that post-traumatic stress, if you're around someone else who's very negative, so like my post-traumatic stress was from my cancer, right? So if I hung out with somebody who always spoke about, let's say, being sick, that could trigger me, right? Because I don't want to talk about that. Who wants to talk about that, right? So I might detach myself from somebody who triggers my anxiety. So after post-traumatic stress, you might, it might be caused, let's say, by, well, a severe, prolonged traumatic event, which is post-traumatic stress, but maybe you don't have post-traumatic stress. Oh, wait a second. Wait, something's off. Oh, sorry. I don't know what I'm saying. Obsessive compulsive disorder. That is post-traumatic stress. I don't know what I'm saying. So you're exposed to severe prolonged traumatic stress, which is what causes PTSD. All right. I want to get to obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, before I had an anxiety disorder, this is what I had, okay? My first thing was panic. I panicked when I was a little girl. I had panic but I didn't know I was panicking. Okay, but my panic came and then it went. But then I found myself having health anxiety. I was obsessively worried about my health and the health of my family. But then what I lived with every day, okay, was OCD. I became very OCD. Like everything had to be clean, okay? I was so obsessed. I was so germophobic. Like, I was the only kid in America, at least I felt this way, okay, that would have like, there would be like 6, 8 of us playing in my room as a child, and I would get upset because they were making a mess. What kid gets upset because there's a mess in your room, right? My mother and father barely had to tell me, go clean your room. I was always cleaning. I actually have a memory of my mother being on the phone with my grandmother, because my grandmother used to live in Brooklyn before she moved out to where I live now. And my grandmother and my grandfather lived in Brooklyn. We lived on the island, and I was cleaning the refrigerator, and I must have been about 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6 tops. And my mother's going, yep, she's cleaning the refrigerator. And my mother's just sitting there watching me. What mother is going to be upset having a daughter that likes to clean? Let her clean the refrigerator. Hence, I got the nickname Cinderella in my family because I always cleaned. Cinderella, Cinderella, I always cleaned. And my sister got away with murder because I would just do all the cleaning. So I was obsessed. I was germophobic. But for somebody who has obsessive compulsive disorder, okay, so it affects your thoughts. You have very intrusive thoughts. Now, intrusive thoughts are normal to even somebody who doesn't have anxiety. But intrusive thoughts, okay, it affects you. The intrusive thoughts become more repetitive, okay? You repeatedly perform physical or mental acts, and basically you're doing this in order to prevent those thoughts, okay? You're relieving your distress. So when you're stressed about something, okay, like I had health anxiety. So all this cleaning, and I would wash my hands constantly, okay? All this cleaning, of course, was probably to keep myself and my family safe from being sick. Makes sense, right? That's me with my house being clean. It dries me up a wall. That was me too. And my mother was the same way. And who do you think? Of course, my mother, I got her behavior. And when I first got married, this, that, and I was going through everything, I would clean obsessively, okay? And even if you're not germophobic, you're still somebody, let's say, things have to be orderly, okay? They just have to be just so. And if something gets out of whack, that makes you, go out of your mind, right? I'm that type of person. I'll go with someone's house, and if the picture's crooked, I'll be like, oh my God, because the picture's crooked, and I'm in your house. I'm not going to touch your stuff, but it'll bother me until I leave that your picture's crooked. Yeah, to this day that bothers me. My husband always makes fun of me. Because I'll be like, oh my God, that's crooked, go fix it. And he's like, what if I left it? I'm like, I might slap you, I don't know, and I might get angry, but you better go fix it. I don't like it when things are not. And the thing is, my husband is very disorderly. So yeah, I married an opposite. So that really, yeah. So anyway, so that is OCD. So basically, you're repeating acts over and over again. You maybe you're repeating, you're checking, right? That's the other thing. You're aggressively checking. You're always repetitively, aggressively, like you can't leave the house without checking. Let's say, is the gas off? Are the lights off? Did I shut the refrigerator? Did I shut the window? I mean, you can drive in the car and get on the parkway and go, I have to go back home. I have to go back home. Because, like, it's in your head. Even though you know you checked like 100 times, you gotta go back home. Because did I close that? You can't, So I remember my bedroom was on the second floor. I couldn't leave my room. I had to check maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I don't know. Because I thought I left my closet light on. And because I didn't think I closed my closet doors. And although I know I did it, I still had to turn around and go back and check. I have OCD my whole life. I was like you. I have been cleaning since I was 5. Yeah. So you were Cinderella just like me. Yep. Oh, my mom loved it. Yep. Never had to tell me to clean my room. And I always helped her clean. So, I mean, see how things fall one into another, right? So repeatedly checking things because you don't trust yourself that you did it. Okay? Or you're counting. You gotta count. I mean, there are people who have to do things 5 times, 10 times, 20 times before that they could leave a room or re-enter a room or go to the next thing in life. Like they can't move on until, let's say, they touch their nose 3 times. Or, I mean, that is like an OCD. And then the last thing I want to talk about, rituals. Yes. They have rituals, but it's more of an obsession. Having a ritual all in of itself is not bad. We will have rituals that we do, but it's being so obsessed about it. Like it has to be the same. And God forbid you change from it. It's got to be orderly. Think of, Big Bang Theory, right? Sheldon. Who watched Big Bang Theory, and knows Sheldon? I mean, he had OCD, right? You know what I'm talking about. Depression. Let's talk about depression. Depression. Whew, another thing that I also experienced, and I know a lot of you have experienced depression. None of these things are good. None of these things make us feel good, all right? And I'm sure as I'm talking, a lot of you can say, I've got that. Oh yeah, I got that too and that too. Depression. How do you know you have depression? Well, just because you have anxiety, it doesn't mean you're depressed. But anxiety that is prolonged, after a while, you do feel depressed because you just want to be over this anxiety and how it's taken over your life. So you become depressed, which means you have this sadness. And no matter all the good in your life, because I remember being depressed and people being like, how could you be so depressed? You're so blessed, right? You're blessed. Think of your husband and your children and your house and this and how, if you're so blessed, how can you be sad, right? It didn't matter. When I got down on my knees and I begged God to take my life, it didn't matter to me. My children, my husband, I loved them, but I felt useless. I was so depressed. I was holding them back. I was keeping them from enjoying life. They were better off without me. That's how I felt. the hopelessness, when you reach this sadness and hopelessness, loss of interest in life, it's pretty freaking scary. It's scary. Who relates to me? Who relates to that? Say me, yes, give me a 3. Let me know. I mean, and you have like this loss of energy because you have no desire, no motivation in life. You don't want to do anything. Like you lost your mojo. You lost your zest of life, of living life. It affects your sleep, your weight. And people with depression have feelings of like guilt and unworthiness, which is why I got down on my knees and I said to God, you know what? Just take me. Just do it, because what good am I anyway, right? So ladies, I just named, what was that, like 8, 10 things, that forms of anxiety. But now I want to get into, oh gosh, my God. All right. I know I'm long-winded, but I felt like this was really necessary. I'm going to try to not take so long, okay? Why do we have these forms of anxiety, okay? Again, anxiety is multifaceted. You don't have them for just one reason, all right? A lot of times, ladies, we want to blame our hormones. And yes, because the majority of the women in this group, majority of you are in the ages of 40 to 60. So a lot of you are blaming your hormones. And yes, hormones is one of the whys. But ladies, if you had anxiety even before perimenopause or menopause, have a feeling that's not the only reason why you're anxious. So let's get into this. Genetics, okay? Yes, anxiety, we can get it from mom, dad, okay? So the New York University Lagoon of Health, okay? I found a quote. It says, studies show that kids whose parents struggle with anxiety are 2 to 7 times more likely to develop an anxiety disorder themselves. So if your anxiety is causing your child, let's say, to miss out on activities, okay? I mean, let's say you're a mom, or you had a mom with tons of anxiety, okay? And like, all right, my mom, I know, had tons of anxiety. Woo. And looking back now, there were many times in my life that I can see that, you know, my mom gave me permission to do this, but wouldn't give me permission to do that. Not because it really would hurt me, but because of her anxiety, right? Her anxiety, she wouldn't allow me, because what if something happened? Now, I wasn't anxious about it. Now, for example, okay, just for example, I remember I mean, all my life, my parents loved Disney. And they would take me to Disney World. I was never allowed to go on Space Mountain. Now, Space Mountain is a very basic roller coaster. It's in the dark, which makes it scary, but compared to other roller coasters, it's a very basic roller coaster. But I always wanted to go on because I'm like that. I love joy rides, okay? So, and my father didn't have the stomach for it. My mother was a little scaredy cat. I never had anyone to go. So, I was never allowed. The first time I was on Space Mountain, I went with my husband. Yes, I had to be married, okay? I was finally with my husband. And he's like, what do you want to go on? Space Mountain? Yeah. Because I was never allowed to go on it because of not my father. My father just had a very weak stomach. But if it was up to him, he would have been like, yeah, just go. I just can't go with you. My mother was like, absolutely not. She wouldn't let me go on. So, in other words, we can pass on our anxiety to our children because we teach them, okay? Like every time your child leaves the house, okay? I gotta bring back, oops, sorry, I lost, okay. Let me ask you this. Every time your child leaves the house, how many of you go, be careful, stay safe, be careful? How many of you do that? I bet you every single one of you. How many of you do that to your children? Be careful, stay safe. Now, that seems harmless, right? What mother does not tell her child, be careful, to stay safe? But do you know that's also can make them anxious? Why? Because they could turn around and go like, what do you mean be careful? Am I doing anything dangerous? Why would I have to be careful? Can something bad happen to me? So you're putting something in their head that something can and could go wrong. You know, like my mother used to act like, this may be the last time I see you, you know? I mean, it was ridiculous sometimes when I left the house. You know, my mother had a rule. My sister and I were never allowed to drive in the car together unless my parents were in the car. Because she was so afraid we would get into a car accident and she would lose both her kids at the same time. I was never allowed to drive alone with my sister in the car. So when I got my license, because my sister and I are just shy of 4 years apart. When I got my license, she was like, cool, you could drive me here. My mom was like, nope, because what if? This is what I mean. So, yes, we can give our anxieties, it's a learned behavior. We can give that to our kids. It's in the genetics. So anxiety does run in families, okay? According to Dr. Anna Bauer from UNC Health Talk, okay? The anxiety gene, okay? There's no anxiety gene, okay? Like we're not passing genes, but rather many genes that interact to predispose someone to anxiety. But the environment influences the extent to which those genes will get switched on and off. So basically, we do pass genes on, but just because you receive the gene, okay, doesn't mean you'll automatically be anxious, okay? But because of what I said before, how your parents, you know, if you had those parents that were like, be careful, and you weren't allowed to do anything because of their anxiety, that can switch on your gene, if that makes sense. So genetics is definitely one reason why you have anxiety. Stressful events, okay? Stress. We know we all have stress in our lives. But there's only so much stress our bodies, our minds and our bodies can take, okay? So what is very stressful for you may not be very stressful for me, okay? So stress, okay, is relative, okay? But when something extremely stressful comes on, that can start, if you don't understand how to deal with the stress, you don't manage that stress, nip that stress in the bud, so to speak, okay? You have continuous stressful hormones, all right? And you basically, you get these body sensations, and your body becomes super sensitized over time. And we start making associations. I actually did a whole live about all of this. About each one of them. So I have a live about stress, live about body sensations, and your body becoming sensitized, and making associations. In other words, how many of you walked into a store, had a panic attack, and then would not go back to that store? Or you go back to the store and right away you're like, I'm going to have a panic attack because I was here last time and I had a panic attack. I know what's going to happen again. So we start making associations. When we start doing that, we really stress ourselves out. So anxiety is the response to the stress. Makes sense, right, ladies? Okay. Another thing that causes our anxiety is experiencing like violence, like abusive, prolonged violence in fearful situations where you get phobias, all right? I don't think I have to explain that, okay? And also being very negative, being around a lot of negativity in life. I don't think I have to explain that either. I actually have a whole life training all about negativity. You know, you have to have, I mean, a negative mind, you're gonna apparently have anxiety someday, you know, because when you're super positive and you have peace of mind, people with peace, okay, who are truly at peace, do not suffer from anxiety. I mean, our goal is to get to peace, right? So if you're being very negative about yourself, others, the world, and you're around a lot of negativity, okay, this is something that could definitely cause you to have so much more anxiety. Okay, so let's talk about chemical imbalances, because a lot of people joke, you know, like if someone's acting crazy, you go, oh, she's having a chemical imbalance, right? And we joke about it, or a hormonal imbalance. But they're two different things, and we're going to talk about both, okay? Chemical imbalance is an imbalance of the neurotransmitters, okay, that send messages to the brain, okay? So the brain receives these messages that tells the body how to function, like what to do, okay? So it'll do things like regulate your sleep and your mood. So somebody with chemical imbalances may have, let's say, a lot of sadness, a lot of mood swings, you know, and anxiety. So hormonal imbalance is too much or too little of hormones, all right, that lead to symptoms. So let's say the hormones, I mean, we know those hormones well, the stress hormones, or let's say the sleep hormones like melatonin. We have melatonin, we have cortisol, which is also a sleep hormone too, believe it or not. So the causes of a hormonal imbalance would be things like a lot of stress. Even medications can mess with your hormones, and medical conditions like thyroid issues, okay? Your lifestyle, not getting enough sleep and the way you eat and lack of exercise, you know, and your age, because of course we know girls hit puberty, right? And then we start having children. Then we go into perimenopause and to menopause. So yes, hormonal imbalances, chemical imbalances, both of those can lead to all kinds of symptoms, and definitely anxiety and depression. So weight loss or weight gain, fatigue, mood swings, hair loss, the vaginal dryness, night sweats, infertility, a lot of these things from hormonal or chemical imbalances. Now, do you have a medical condition? Now, if you have a medical condition, that's something too that can cause anxiety. Why? Well, things like a thyroid issue, heart issues, respiratory, digestive. Basically, when you have things like this, you feel symptoms, okay? So if your thyroid's off, you're going to feel symptoms in your body. If your heart is off, right, you're going to feel symptoms. If you're having digestive issues, you feel symptoms. So when your body has like some kind of sickness, illness, condition, whatever you want to call it, you're going to get symptoms, right? What you do is you start feeling these symptoms, and the feeling of the symptom and the stress of having not just the symptom, but having the condition, okay, gives you or leads to the anxiety. Does that make sense, ladies? Digestive issues, sugar, diabetes, yes. So the symptoms, okay, now it doesn't mean, I have thyroid issues. I have Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, and I'm menopausal. But none of them give me anxiety. None of them. For obvious reasons, ladies, because I just, I have control. I know what anxiety is and why I have it. Anxiety no longer has control over me. But just because you have a medical condition doesn't mean that it's definitely, it's anxiety, but what's going to happen, it's going to make the anxiety worse because you're focused on the symptoms, the stress of having. That's why when I had cancer, okay, I was focused on how I felt, focused on, oh my gosh, am I going to die? I'm 31, I got 2 babies, the post-traumatic stress. I was focused on that. So of course I had anxiety. I was having panic. All right. But then what happens too is when you have a condition, what happens? You get put on drugs. How many of you have conditions and you take medicine? Well, what do you think the medicine could do? The medicine can worsen your anxiety, because especially if you have health anxiety, you're like, I don't want to take this. What if I take this? What are the side effects going to be? Well, the side effects of the drug, they're real. Some drugs give you side effects, but we don't like side effects. So we don't like it. That all making sense, ladies? So a lot of you may have anxiety because you have a medical condition and you don't like having a medical condition. You don't like the symptoms that come from the medical condition. You don't like taking the medication. You don't like being told that now at your age you have this wrong with you. It makes you feel old. It makes you face reality. And that's something we don't like to do as well. But the one pro tip I want to give right now, manage the medical condition first. Because a lot of you do have anxiety about your medical condition. Okay? And yeah, you want to manage your anxiety, but get your medical condition under control first. Then deal with the anxiety. Okay? All right. I'm almost done. I promise. I know. Oh my gosh. Okay. So also, I just want to mention too that another reason why you have anxiety, because you have learned patterns in your mind from the past. Because as I said, you have this predisposition, right? You were raised by your mom, your dad, your grandparents, whatever guardian you had, who had anxiety, learned behaviors. You form patterns in your mind over time. And if you don't change those patterns, they grow up with you. You take them into adulthood. So until you make changes, you're not going to see a change. And I know a lot of you have heard me say that. Another thing is substance abuse. Another reason why you have anxiety. Were you somebody who did drugs, alcohol, which is a drug, okay, while you were intoxicated, or maybe you were coming off the alcohol, the drugs, so you were having withdrawal symptoms, all of these affect your body. It changes your body chemistry. You feel the symptoms in your body. We don't like symptoms. We become very sensitized to them. Pain pills for sure. Absolutely. Poor sleep habits. My specialty. I had insomnia, okay? I had sleep anxiety, all right? Now, what we know about poor sleep habits, okay, messes with your hormones, okay? We have stress hormones. You're on Klonopin. I was on Klonopin too for a bit. We know, okay, there's melatonin and there's cortisol, okay? They both help you to sleep. And you're like, I thought cortisol keeps me awake, but you have to hear me out, okay? And if you watch my sleep videos, I don't know if I mentioned this in all of them, but I do mention this, okay? So when you go to sleep, okay, cortisol comes down, melatonin rises. Melatonin rises because we're trying to get you to go to sleep, all right? As you go past midnight and we come to dawn, all right, now it's the morning, cortisol, okay, will shoot up because cortisol helps you wake up. It's like that shot of adrenaline. Get up, get out of bed, okay? Melatonin relaxes, okay? That goes down. But if you're somebody, your clock is all, your sleep and wake cycle is all disrupted, your circadian rhythm, it's called, okay? This is why, like, people with SAD, okay, they need the daylight and they're not getting as much daylight anymore, so their circadian rhythm might be out of whack, you know? See, all these things lead one to another, right? So you might have more stress hormones in your body and you stay in this heightened arousal, okay? Which is why your sleep and wake cycle is out of whack. So basically, when you have these stress hormones, it alters the brain. So you're thinking with a different part of your brain, a more emotional part of the brain, not so much with the logical part of the brain. So now that you're having a different part of your brain running your life, okay? You're not focusing as you normally do. Your concentration's off, right? You're making decisions differently. Your problem solving is off, you know, because of that brain function is just so off. Poor sleep habits will mess with your brain, you know? So you feel overwhelmed because you're not sleeping well and you feel unable to cope in life. So nutritional deficiencies, all right, that's another reason. Now, your brain chemistry is basically imbalanced. Nutritional deficiencies basically means you're not getting the vitamins that your body needs to have balance, okay? So we're talking about things like serotonin, dopamine, GABA, all right? These are like neurotransmitters that your brain needs to speak to the body that, hey, you know, they use the neurotransmitters for your digestion, your reproduction, everything, your circulation. And if it's off, you get symptoms and everything's out of whack, okay? I don't know how else to explain it. I mean, you just feel out of whack. That's why people look at you and I mean, we joke sometimes, oh, you know, she's got a chemical imbalance, but it's real. And nutritional deficiencies could be one of them. So that's why when I get my blood work done, you know, it's good to check your vitamin B levels, mostly vitamin B12 and 9, Vitamin D. Vitamin D is so important. Ladies, you want to have good vitamin D. Your vitamin D is low. Get out there in the sun. That's the best way to get it. But I mean, if you're like me, I have melatonin. I'm sorry. When I'm trying, not melatonin. Yeah, melatonin. The skin cancer, right? Is very high in my family. I go in the sun and I put on tons and tons of sunscreen. So vitamin D, okay, good. I take about 10,000 to 12,000 IUs a day to get mine up, because I don't eat any foods with vitamin D in it, and I'm not out in the sun a lot because I'm inside working a lot. And now that it's winter, I'm not a cold person. Melanoma. Thanks, Jen. I don't know why I said that wrong, but that is something my father had 4 times, and I keep going back and forth to the dermatologist because I have a very high risk of it. Magnesium, that's another thing. Make sure your magnesium levels are good. Zinc, omega-3 fatty acids. These are just, certain vitamins that you want to have like a good amount in your bloodstream, okay? But what also makes your nutritional deficiencies off could be maybe you have a health condition. There are certain health conditions that will affect, like Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, and there are medications, okay, that can affect the absorption. And so if you have like an autoimmune and you're on a certain medication, some of these medications affect how, the vitamins that you get from your food. It will affect how the absorption of these vitamins into the bloodstream. So you may want to always be, like when you get blood work done, just say, can you check my vitamin D, my magnesium, just to make sure. And ladies, we need to talk about social media. Social media, okay, is definitely something that can give you anxiety, all right? And I don't think I have to tell you this. I mean, to some of you, you're like, what? What do you mean it gives you anxiety? Well, ladies, hear me out for a second, okay? So what are we doing when we're on social media? We're scrolling on Facebook. We're looking at other people's posts. We go, oh, look how pretty she is. And look how happy that marriage is. And look at their car and their house. What do? We do a lot of comparisons, don't we? Right? So what we do is we judge ourselves, our appearance. It affects our relationships. We're jealous of the status of other people. So when we make comparisons on social media, it can really affect our mental health. And who knows FOMO? F-O-M-O, FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. That's another thing. Your FOMO goes up. Why? Because you're constantly checking. What did I miss? What did I miss? In the 5 minutes I didn't look, what was reported? What happened? What events happened? We have to always look on our phones. What's going on? What's happening? Another way we can have anxiety is because we get very, very overwhelmed. Why? How many of you are on Google? Because let's say you have health anxiety and you're looking up all those symptoms, or you're following not just me but 20 other anxiety coaches to learn how to overcome anxiety. We're listening to podcasts, right? But the thing is, at the risk of you not following me anymore, you got to narrow it down. You got to pick your favorites, because the thing is, too much information, okay? Too much research, too much information is overwhelming. Who are you going to trust? pick that. Limit your time on social media. If you're overwhelmed, limit the time. Okay? Also, I mean, on social media, there's things like cyberbullying and harassment. Now, that may happen more teenage, 20-year-olds, but I have heard it happening for people even like 30 and above, okay? Cyberbullying, harassment. I know I've been harassed. And I guess because I'm out there, you know, every once in a while you get that one person who doesn't know how to stop. And, you know, and it's something real. Now, it didn't give me anxiety, but it made me angry, and I threatened to call the police and report the person and have him shut down. You know, so harassment, cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is a big one. Unfortunately, I mean, so many, I mean, especially among teenagers, 20-year-olds, so much anxiety, depression, and suicide has gone up so much because of the social media. So, you know, if you have children, you know, monitor them. Monitor what's going on, you know, because this is real, ladies. It can also lead to isolation. We talked about isolation in another live, about being alone. I did a whole live about being alone. Please catch that. But basically, being on your phone all the time. If you're on your phone, where are you not? You're not having one-on-one time with your loved ones, right? Do you know how many times I was in a room with kids, right? And they're all on their phones. And I'm like, how come you're not talking to one another? We are. They're texting each other. But you're next to one another. Talk. You know, like I never understood that. So, you know, I mean, so it brings on feelings of loneliness. All right? So, ladies, I know this is long. All my lives are usually not this long. But this has to be said. There's like two more things, okay? We already talked about sleep disruption before. Social media can also disrupt your sleep. You got to limit the use, okay? You got to take a break, all right? Because if you're somebody who, especially if you have FOMO, you're always like, I can't put the phone down until like I close my eyes because what's happening? What's going on? You know, you're always checking, you know, you're always missing out, right? And if you have compulsive posting, in other words, you have this need to always post because you want to be seen. You are driven by that need for validation and attention. It's like the brain being overstimulated. It's an award system. Like, to you, it's very important. How many likes did I get? Did anybody comment on my post? How many likes did I get? That's so important to you. And it's like you base your happiness on the likes that you get. If my post didn't get a lot of likes, what does that mean about me? Okay, the only other thing I want to talk about, and I saved the best for last. I want to talk about God for a second, okay? Ladies, we didn't talk about yet how to overcome. I mean, we talked about the forms of anxiety and why you get anxiety. But how do you overcome? What are the things that you need to do to overcome all of this, right? Okay? I'm going to start off with God because that's important. Forming a relationship with God, all right? We know science, but forming a relationship with God and trusting in God, okay? Help me in so many ways. I mean, what is anxiety? Anxiety is a lack of trust. Okay? It's uncertainty. living in uncertainty, living with a lack of trust. So I put my trust in God. So I don't worry. I don't fear like I used to. So all those forms of anxiety that I had, they really don't bother me anymore. Like my OCD has gone down significantly. Do I have spurts of it here and there? Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes, like, I'll put something in the dryer, and I'll be like, did I put the dryer on? And meanwhile, I can hear the dryer, okay? But I'll be like, did I put the dryer on? And it's like, Carla, you hear the dryer. You know the dryer's on. And I catch myself in that moment, and I'm like, all right, Carla, you can do it. You can keep going up those stairs. You know that dryer's on, and I have to talk to myself, out of it, like. So that is like one thing is understanding that there is a power higher than yourself. Forming your relationship with God. Otherwise, okay, when I researched all these forms of anxiety, okay, when I researched anxiety from when I decided I have to overcome anxiety, like medications were not doing it for me, going to professionals were not doing it for me, so I basically researched, okay? All these things, all these forms of anxiety, the way to overcome them is the same but different. I know that's confusing. So, in other words, CBT and DBT, okay, are two forms of therapy. It's a talk therapy. CBT is more of a talk therapy, okay, and DBT was what they call diabolical therapy. Basically, you are getting back in control of your central nervous system. It's like somatic. You're doing things to regain control and regulate your central nervous system, so to speak, okay? What I do is a combination of CBT and DBT, okay? So I'm not trained. I'm trained. I shouldn't say that. I'm trained, but I don't just do CBT or DBT. I do both because I know anxiety requires both, okay? So we do some talk therapy, but it's not like we sit there and I like, and we stick to the past, and I make you talk about your childhood for like 10 sessions, and that's not how I work. Basically, what we want to do is we want to look at your feelings, look at your thoughts, understand how those feelings and thoughts are working together, okay? How feelings and thoughts are working together. That is giving you this experience of anxiety, all right? The other way to overcome anxiety, well, I hate to even put this in here. Anxiety, okay, you can't overcome anxiety with medication. Let me say that. But medication can act as a Band-Aid, okay? Can act as a Band-Aid to when you're feeling those symptoms, okay? It helps you to deal better with the symptoms. But there are certain forms of anxiety, like depression, okay? I would say if you're very depressed, can't get out of bed, okay, you may want to start with taking some medication just to get yourself out of bed, just so that you can function, okay? There's support groups. Support groups help because you see that there's people who are just like you. You feel not alone. They're there to support you, okay? And you feeling not alone, you have the support, okay? Lifestyle changes. Ladies, lifestyle changes. See, instead of taking medication, because a lot of you don't want to take medication. You take it because the doctor tells you in those 15, 20 minutes, that's the short thing, the quick fix, the short-term thing that you can do. But lifestyle changes is the fix for a lot of these things. Okay, so getting better sleep, eating better, creating a healthier gut, okay? Because the gut and brain connection is a real thing, ladies. If one's healthy, they're both unhealthy, I should say. If one's unhealthy, one affects the other. And I have a whole lot of training about that, so catch that if you don't understand, okay? So lifestyle changes, all these things, are going to help you overcome generalized anxiety, seasonal, panic, health anxiety. But the biggest thing I wanted to talk about was really, there's forming a relationship with God, understanding that there is a power bigger than you. It's surrendering to a power bigger than yourself. All right, so it's a combination, okay? I just want to say quickly, when you work with me, I do a combination of science, and what we do is what I call religious enrichment, okay? I help you to grow your relationship with God. I help you to understand the science. We put it together. It's learning how to get back in control of your thoughts, get back in control of your emotions, all right? Understanding what anxiety is and why you have it, which I kind of went over it with you, but I put everything to customize. I customize everything I do according to your lifestyle, to what you're feeling. How can I get you to work with me? All you have to do is message me, text me, and that's it. And we'll talk about it. We'll get on a phone call, and I will talk to you about what it is. But I don't have. Wait a minute, I couldn't read that. How can it work with me? Sorry, I couldn't. But you don't have the money to do it. Okay. The thing is, until you talk with me, you don't know how much I charge. Okay, that's number one. Number two, yes, there are certain programs that might be a little bit more than others because of the fact that I spend so much time with you. My goal is to get you over this. And I spend so much time with you, it's worth every penny. Plus, I give a guarantee. My guarantee is if I don't have you better in 10 to 12 weeks, I will work with you for free until you are better. That's how much I have confidence that what I do works. But I also have a program that is super affordable. It's a step-by-step program, okay, where basically I give you videos, you follow the videos, you still have access to me, but not one-on-one, and you understand how to overcome anxiety. But if that sounds interesting to you, Jen, message me and let's talk about it. But before I go, ladies, especially if you come on the replay, if there's any clarification needed for anything I said, any questions, I know this was a really long live training, but it was necessary. It was very necessary. Please put your questions, comments in the comment section. I will get back to you, okay? And the replay will be available for 30 days, and then after that, it will be uploaded to YouTube. And if you don't belong to my YouTube channel yet, please find your way there. I would love for you to subscribe. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye, ladies.